there. Okay, good morning, everybody. This is the Measure R Advisory Committee meeting. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I didn't get a agenda. Is there a spare one?
You guys
floating
don't
around?
have agendas? Do any of you have agendas?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay. What we can do now is here. Let me grab one.
They're printed double-sided too.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, now we can get going. Okay, I'd like to have, excuse me, first thing I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Okay, committee member Armstrong.
Present.
Redwine.
Here.
Hoon.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
And I'll make a note that committee member Weber is absent.
Okay, well, it looks like we have enough for a quorum today. Do we have any public comment?
Kind of surprised by that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move right along to the next item on the agenda. We're going to be discussing the items that are related to Measure R at this point. I guess we're going to review our resolution by the advisory committee.
Yeah, this was an item that was on the last agenda as well. We only had 3 committee members here last time, so I thought I'd put it on the agenda to follow up with those who weren't here at the last meeting. It looks like committee member Weber is absent again. So I just didn't know if you had had time to review the resolution from the last meeting, and if you had any questions. I can kind of go over briefly what the changes are, if you want me to do that first, and then have discussion about that.
Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go.
What's happened is the board has actually expanded the role of the committee to be advisory as well. Initially, it was oversight only based on the resolution that was passed for the sales tax measure. Based on the feedback from this committee and the public as well, the oversight role seemed to be pretty popular and wanted by some of those in the community as well as you on this committee. So the board expanded the role of the committee by adding the advisory function as well. This is the other addition to this resolution kind of follows the annual budget process for the county. And so what's going to happen based on this resolution is that departments wishing to use Measure R funds will submit requests to myself, the auditor controller, assistant CAO Randy Hooper is the budget team for the county. That will take place in April when we open our budget process. Our budget process typically opens with a memo from myself and the Auditor Controller Clinton Shad in March that goes out to our department heads and asks them to submit department requested budgets by a certain date in April, early April. So with those requests will also be requests for Measure R funds. The committee will then compile those requests. They'll bring them to this committee. Our budget team will compile those requests, bring them to the Measure R committee in May. And we'll also ask that each of the departments who have submitted a request are present at that meeting to answer any questions that you may have or to provide any clarification if they need to provide additional justification for the use of Measure R funds and why that fits the use under the Measure R guidelines. And then from that standpoint, or from that time, we'll take the committee recommendations to the Board of Supervisors in a regular meeting scheduled in June, which is prior to the adopted recommended budget for the next fiscal year, which starts in July 1. The committee will also have an opportunity, of course, to meet after the recommended budget because after the recommended budget, when our fiscal year starts in July 1, typically the final adopted budget is not until the end of September. And so during that time period, if the committee wants to meet again and talk about the recommended budget, things that the board either approved or didn't approve based on the committee's recommendations, we can have those discussions, and there's still an open window for this committee to provide additional feedback for the budget for that fiscal year. So that will be the annual process. It will start in April with department requests to the budget team. It'll go to you guys in May. Your recommendations will then go to the board in June. And then, of course, you'll have that open window between July and September before the final budget is adopted.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
I actually have a question. How does it work if this committee sees something that we would like funded? Do we wait to see if a department asks for it, or how does that work?
You can bring it up at a committee meeting, or you can actually ask for it to be agendized if you want to submit it to myself. And we can get it on the agenda to discuss at this level, and you guys can decide as a group whether or not that's something you want to recommend.
Okay, okay.
Did you have something in mind?
No, I have people that talk to me once they know, and I'm sure once, sometimes things they ask questions, especially about the roads and the sidewalks. But, we've already discussed that, and I try to let them know how it works. But, you never know when somebody's going to say, well, what about this? And sometimes the community has really great ideas that aren't real expensive. So I was just
Yeah.
wondering how that would work.
I don't know if you noticed recently, I think it was at the last meeting, the board actually approved a policy to address non-county maintained roads. Because what we've run into with Measure R funds is that some of this stuff has been designated towards capital projects and infrastructure, but through the road funds, they have certain funding mechanisms that if it's included in the road department, maintained roads, sidewalks, bridges, infrastructure, then it can be funded by the funds that they receive from users tax and from SRS funding and other funding they get from the federal and state government. If it's not in our system, and if we use Measure R funds, which is discretionary funds, to improve some of those roads, they can no longer maintain them with the road fund money they get through the users tax. And so it has to be non-county maintained infrastructure. And so that's something to keep in mind that's pretty important. But the board did just adopt a policy to address some of those issues, because there are roads in each of our districts that need some serious repair.
Oh, yeah.
And what they're looking at from a primary focus and kind of a criteria is that, are they accessible by emergency response? Are they accessible by other, utilities or whatever else, other things that need to get access to those roads in those areas? It's going to be a priority to kind of address that. And they haven't set a funding level, but this is a perfect use for Measure R funds going forward.
Okay. That's good to know. Yes.
I just had a question. Thanks for that great explanation of how the budget period works. And then just looking at the resolution, looks like item I there, on the back, is this the review of the prior year spending?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, well, each year, the department, any of the departments that receive Measure R funding during that fiscal year will provide a report to this committee, and it answers those questions that are listed in I to make sure that the funds didn't supplant any other funds. And then this committee will actually develop a report and either present it orally or in writing. And in the past couple of years, I think you've done both.
Yes. I've presented our findings the last couple of years to the board of supervisors, and we've given it in written form, just so there's as much transparency in Measure R as we can give to the public.
Yeah, we probably could email you the past reports so you can kind of get an idea what they look like.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Anything else on the resolution?
I don't see anything else on it.
All right.
Any
thank
other
you.
questions on the resolution at all? Okay. Do we need to vote on it, or? Okay. All right, we'll go on to the next item, which is review the 23-24 data reports, financial reports. So far. Anybody have any questions on it? I think it's a lot.
So the biggest thing you're going to see on the, so you're given two documents, the balance sheet and then the revenue expense reports. The balance sheet just shows total cash available for funds and then fund balance. The revenue expense shown on your balance sheet can be cross references to the revenue expense report. Those should match if they do. The thing you might want to take note of is on our revenue expense report, the far right column is percent expended. You look there, those are pretty far behind the year. Looking at 50%, and since we're on top of the share, 22.19%. And that comes from a couple of things. One, we funded some positions down there that either have not been filled or filled and then lapsed or vacant once again. And also just the
I have a question. I probably haven't dug deep enough to find this, but in the budget with the encumbered items, such as positions and that, is there a listing of the things that are encumbered, and is there a listing of items that have been spent in the past? So, I mean, let me ask the question, what did you spend this money on? Is there a breakout of those individual items?
Yeah, I can work for the next meeting to get, either predetermine the encumbered funds, what they're for, and then we can definitely get some detail.
What about in the past? I
I
mean,
can get detail for the past.
okay, I looked, but I didn't dig deep enough, I'm sorry.
I'll take a look at those for our next meeting, and then I guess I'll provide the breakdown of what's on.
I think it would really help with transparency, just to me ask the question, this is what we spent it on. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I will add that two of the positions that are funded under Measure R and approved, one of them is filled now, just as of Friday of last week. We have our Administrative Services Coordinator that was funded under Measure R that's been filled. Unfortunately, we stole from another department, and so we filled it with our Clerk of the Board, who is Kylie Goffner, who you just saw recently. She's going to transfer over to that Administrative Services Coordinator, and we are applying the position for the Clerk of the Board, but that is a funded Measure R position. And in addition to that, our OES coordinator is going through an interview process right now. We had several applications, which is a good improvement from the
good.
last couple of recruitments.
That's good.
Do you know about how many deputy sheriff positions you have open?
The total number of vacancies, I'm not sure at this point. I think currently they're running pretty low. We do have an open recruitment going. If I remember correctly, did they only have 6 filled?
So there's 2 in the academy right now, I don't know if they're counting those as, they're filled, I don't know if they're counting those as available deputies.
Yeah, I don't really want to guess. I think there were 6 or 7 filled, and there are 13 allocations. So, but don't quote me on that. I could look that up for you and report back to you.
Okay, well, we can go with that. Do you have both planners now? Do you have the 2 planning positions now?
Yes, they are both filled.
Okay. 'Cause I remember we were having a problem with one of them a while back.
Yeah, the Measure R positions that are filled that I can think of are the planner, the code enforcement officer, now the administrative services coordinator, hopefully soon the emergency services coordinator, and dispatch, I think, is still, I think they're down to 3 or 4 full-time FTEs at this point, and there are 6 allocations. The sheriff hopes to expand that to 8 sometime soon. As you may or may not know, we recently had an assessment done on our interoperability in the county, and one of the determinations is that, of course, the dispatch is not staffed correctly, and we kind of knew that. We just had a really difficult time filling positions, even for the 6 that we have.
Yeah, that's a rough job.
Yeah.
That is a real rough job.
Glenn, am I forgetting Measure R positions? And then, of course, the wage adjustments that were approved for our public safety positions.
Yeah, we have the wage adjustments, and then, like you mentioned them all, there's a dispatch position, a planner position, a services coordinator position, an OES position, and then a position out at the animal control as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, those are all approved. Dispatch is low right now, so when it's not filled, we don't reimburse.
Right.
The emergency coordinator, the OES position is currently vacant. The services program coordinator, Neil just mentioned, that just got filled. The planner, we actually had one leave and then we were vacant for a short time and got it filled. So it's ebbs and flows. But again, the next meeting, I'll provide you all with an itemized list of the positions, and even like, deputy sheriff's offset by 10% or 11%, so you can have those documents.
Okay.
Did you find a grant writer? You still looking for a grant writer?
No, we did not. Initially, the grant writer was funded through Measure R. That position was changed to the administrative services coordinator
Oh.
that I just mentioned. We ran 3 recruitments for a grant writer, and we're unsuccessful.
Okay.
Signs of the times.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's a difficult people to find.
So,
I think it would be wise to have that information that Clinton's going to provide to us. One of the supervisor candidates broke out that he talked to him, and there's $3.5 million will solve all the problems of the sheriff's office. So making sure that we know that stuff's encumbered and that there's a plan for it already, and then what's available to help solve all the other problems.
Yeah, as we've talked about before in this committee, that the infrastructure and the capital projects are a priority of Measure R as well. That's what the voters approved also. Initially, of course, after a year of Measure R funds, we didn't have significant enough money, a fund balance to actually address any of those issues. And so, as Clint mentioned, we have these dedicated fund sources towards these positions that have been approved, as well as wage adjustments. But as those positions are not filled, of course, what we expect to transfer is less than what we actually transferred during the fiscal year. So we've been able to establish a fund balance. That fund balance can be gone with one capital project.
and as more money comes in, we can keep funding more stuff, so. But we had to have a balance in order to start doing stuff. We couldn't just start spending money we didn't have. So. Okay, any other questions? Any other comments or anything? No? Okay, then we'll move right along. We'll go for an update on our Measure R projects, capital improvement projects that were approved by the board. Good morning.
Test. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so I think the last time I was before you guys, we were kind of at the point where we were getting ready to, get into the design. We had, I think I described previously, we have an on-call list of design professionals, engineers, architects, and planners, which is great because whenever you do have funding, that makes things easier. So through the on-call services agreement, we did actually retain LACO Engineering out of Humboldt County, I think they're out of Eureka. And if you recall, the specific projects that the board had appropriated the Measure R funding for the capital improvements included the county-owned property at the Veterans Memorial Hall, the parking area. I think I previously described it as a swimming pool. These last couple weeks, if you've driven by there with all the rain we've been having, you can certainly see that. And so that was one of the projects was improving that facility for the use of the public and certainly the veterans that frequent the building. The second project was a reconstruction of the parking area kind of to the west of the courthouse, south of the jail. So again, a county-owned property that if you go by and look at, I mean, you can see that it's just in desperate need of something. So LACO was able to do a really good job based on the kind of the input of county leadership. The project was discussed as part of the county's capital improvement plan. Through kind of the finalization of the design, we engaged with our county engineer, who's our public works director, our administrative team, and then of course our consulting engineers. With respect to the Veterans Hall, they do have a solution. It was a really challenging design because it's just so flat. To actually get the drainage improved on that property, they were able to do that, not lose any parking spaces. So that's going to be, I think, a really good thing for the public and certainly again for the veterans that use the building. And then for the parking area to the west of the courthouse and south of the sheriff's office, again, really challenging piece of property. It actually kind of has the opposite problem. It's really steep, but it's just roughly graded. So if you leave from the road over the sidewalks into the parking area, there's a pretty abrupt ledge that you currently have to kind of navigate. And if you don't have the right sort of vehicle, you may have issues. So LACO was able to do a really good job with this property too. It's going to involve actually kind of recontouring some of that topography to kind of flatten that grade a little. So it's kind of like, I guess in shelves as you kind of go down to the west. And then at the far end, the far west end, where it does kind of flatten out, the sheriff has a really pressing need for storage. And so we're actually anticipating enclosing that area with kind of security fencing, chain link fencing and some sort of barbed wire top, and a gate to be able to get in there. So that'll really hopefully go a long ways with addressing some of his storage needs that we've been talking about here recently. So design is done. We have a construction bid package put together that'll be released hopefully here soon. And then we'll see what kind of bids we get back. But again, the board has appropriated the funds. You guys have certainly reviewed, the use of that funds with respect to eligibility under Measure R. Everything seems to be good. As Mr. Lopez indicated, there's really difficulty with capital improvements and kind of the contemplating the use of Measure R, because you don't want to get into that area of supplanting a dedicated, maybe in this case, a road fund. I think, in some people's mind, I think like I talked about previously, there was this notion that we're going to be able to go in there and build bridges and airports and all these other really, big projects. And the reality of it is, that's likely not to be the case. But certainly for projects like these that are really vital to the public and to the community, we're hoping to see some really tangible benefits, hopefully here soon from this funding. So certainly available if there's any questions, but that's kind of these two projects in a nutshell.
I have a question.
Sure.
On that storage area that's on that one lot, is there going to be a building there, or is it just going to be fenced?
At this point, it's just going to be fenced. The money that was appropriated really wouldn't be probably to the level that we would need to be able to do a structure, but we certainly could entertain it once we get the site, kind of developed and prepped.
Okay. I was just wondering.
Sure, it's a good idea.
So the bridge that they're replacing, that is, I'm assuming from Measure A funds? The gas tax, the California
Which
gas
bridge?
tax?
Sorry. You mean the one up in Smith River?
Yeah, they're replacing that whole bridge.
That's a state project on US 101.
Right.
I don't know exactly what the funding is, but it probably is, SB1 or, some combination of
Okay.
state and federal funding.
Okay, and so can you educate me on how they choose? Because I know when it was on the ballot, they redid a whole street and kind of to tell us this is what we can do. And then after that was done, there wasn't anything done. And then I saw that they put in some sidewalks where 101 and the Washington Boulevard turn off, so it's a nice walking. So I'm just wondering how those funds get allocated, because the same promise was made is we're going to improve your roads, and if we need a bridge done by SB1, that's great. But I was just wondering if you know how they choose where they're going to do that, if we're going to see any of those funds that we all contribute to go to.
Yeah.
How do they pick those?
So the
I'm just
California
curious.
Transportation Commission has, kind of like we do on a much broader scale, a capital improvement plan. Of course, their responsibilities are statewide, and so they need to be able to stretch, state dollars all around the state within the different regions, and it's a competitive process. Generally, what happens is staff from Caltrans will bring projects forward for consideration, and there's a review process that all has to go through, but ultimately it would be at the discretion of the California Transportation Commission, is my understanding with state projects.
So we have people from here that go there to
The Del Norte
advocate for.
Local Transportation Commission, which represents the city, the county, the harbor, the tribes from transportation issues, they're pretty engaged, I know from experience from working with them through with Caltrans and ultimately through the CTC. An example I know, recent example would be their engagement on the issues with improvements on 199 and 197. That was tied up in litigation for years, and they were actively engaged with Caltrans on addressing the concerns of the litigation, and thankfully that issue seems to be resolved. But yeah, the representation locally would be through the Transportation Commission to the State Transportation Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, no other questions. All right, let's go to our next item on the agenda, which is the update on the Measure R request from the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, I received a brief update from the budget and logistics manager at the sheriff's office, who is their head fiscal person over there. As you recall, the projects that were sent to the board for approval from this committee were radios, upgrades for the sheriff's office, an update to the recording system in their interview rooms, and purchase of some vehicles. Her update said that the radios, all documents have been submitted to Day Wireless / Motorola, and radios are on order. The recording system, all documents have been submitted to Axon, and order has been placed. The vehicles, she's still waiting for quotes. Our typical procurement process requires at least 3 quotes for competitive purposes. Typically, when we have something that's specialized, like a Code 3 vehicle, you don't normally get 3 quotes, even though we can send them out to multiple vendors. It's also due to our rural location. We don't have a lot of vendors that actually respond to some of our RFPs or our requests for quotes.
Right.
And in addition to that, we're talking about vehicles that have been very complicated to come by and to even locate Code 3 vehicles. I think in the past couple of fiscal years, we've had vehicles on the sheriff's budget, and they just have not been able to locate any. The availability is just not there. So they have received 1 quote from a company called Utilitac, which I am not familiar with. They are currently waiting for quotes from Lear, who is typically who we go through for our vehicles and for the upfitting of our vehicles. So it seems like all of these items are moving forward. The orders have been placed for 2 of them, both the recording system and the radios, and we're just waiting for the additional quote for our vehicles.
Now, what kind of vehicles are they looking for? Are they looking for chargers, let's say, over trucks?
Yeah, I believe that
Rams
they
or-
are trying, they did get a couple of trucks, as you guys are aware, if you see them
Right.
driving around town. I think they're currently looking at chargers or some kind of other vehicle that's not an SUV or a truck. So they wanted to cover their bases a little bit with the trucks because our typical patrol vehicles get beat up pretty bad
Yeah.
on off-road chases in our rural area. So having those trucks was a pretty good idea.
So, okay.
And I think they're taking whatever they can find, to be
I'm
honest
sure
with you.
at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, there's no dealerships
Yeah,
in Brookings or here anymore. And
yeah.
dealerships I was in Eureka yesterday, and dealerships down there have very few vehicles too. It's really kind of sad. So, we've gone through all the agenda items. I do have one thing that I didn't put down. For you new guys, we've gone out on several, we've gone to the sheriff's department and looked at their stuff. We've been to animal control, looked at their stuff to try and get an idea of what's going on out there and see how we can help with some of the Measure R funds. I was looking to maybe try and look at another place or 2 this year. Anybody have any ideas on where you'd like to go?
Committee Member Jones, if you guys want to think about that from a
Yeah,
committee
well-
standpoint and kind of get
Well,
an
that's what I-
idea, it wasn't agendized.
I know,
This is
that's-
under the Brown Act, so we need to make sure we don't get too far away from the
Well, no,
agenda. We could add this to another
I think
agenda.
I think we can add it to another one. I just wanted to throw it out there so people can start thinking about where they may want to go. And, just for something to do. So we can look, so we can get a better handle on what's going on. Because there's 47 bill,
It wouldn't even hurt to revisit the ones you've already visited.
well, we could do that too. I mean, that's fine. Whatever you guys want to do. It's all open. Just give it some thought, and, we can have our next meeting. I was thinking we could probably maybe have another meeting in March, if that works for everybody.
Yeah.
We can, because we need to try and get a handle on some of the stuff, because budgeting's coming up.
Yep. So, and just a reminder, we are still looking for the training on the Brown Act. I know you probably had some changes in county council, but kind of keep us in mind.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
that was also part of the updated resolution.
Okay.
Provide training that the committee wished to have, and I know that the Brown Act was on there. Yeah, we did. Our county council, of course, is down to 2 attorneys now.
Yeah.
We typically run with 3, so
Yeah.
as with all of our departments. So,
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments or anything we want to discuss while we're here? No? All right. Well, with that being said, I guess we'll call the meeting to be adjourned at 10:29. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month when we get it worked out.
All right, thank you all.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.